You're okay.
What's good, y'all?
Miles and I are back at another episode of the Jesus Juke. Sorry about missing last week. That was really just my fault. I really don't have an explanation besides I was tired and it did not fit in to the schedule anywhere for real for real. Um, but we back now. You know what I mean?
Yes, sir.
Um, Miles, we was talking off screen. Off screen. Anyway, what I'm trying to say is, I'm for real tired, bro. What I'm trying to say is, this is gonna be an audio only. So if you're one of the people that watches on YouTube, sorry about that. Um, I don't know what is going on, but Riverside is just not. It's not Riverside. I think what's going on is that I need to update my computer. Um, because I was using continuity camera with a desktop to my phone, and it just has not been working. But um, hopefully that'll be up, working better. You know what I mean, by next week. Um, but yeah, I mean, without further ado, you know what I'm saying. I think it's my turn to do an object lesson? Question mark.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's on you this time.
Jeez. All
Uh,
right, the people gonna get what they get.
all right. So, on account of you being tired, let's talk about sleep.
That's crazy. We can do that. All right, bet. Uh, you might know a young man. I don't know what his age was, but a man by the name of Lazarus. He had two sisters, and they called Jesus and told Jesus and his disciples, "Hey, our brother Lazarus, your friend, is sick, and he needs your help." And Jesus, you know what I'm saying, he took his time getting there. So I had it explained to me once this way, that there was like a Jewish kind of folklore tradition type joint where if when a person is dead, it takes their soul or their spirit, whatever immaterial part of them, it takes that part 3 days to actually go to heaven and like leave their body. So after 3 days, they're like really really dead, right? Um,
Interesting.
and essentially, right, Jesus takes 4 days to get there. Takes 4 days to get there, and when he gets there, uh, he cries with them. He cries with them, but then he also says, you know what I'm saying? Maybe I'm mixing stories. I don't think I am, but anyway, he goes and says, "Listen, Lazarus is asleep. Lazarus is only asleep. I don't know why y'all are mourning as hard as y'all are mourning." And they're like, "Jesus, that's not funny, bro. Like, you could have got here, you could have healed him, all these different things." And Jesus, you know what I mean, he goes to the tomb where Lazarus is buried and tells him, like, "Yo, stop sleeping, get up and come out." And lo and behold, this man comes out of the tomb still wrapped up, and he's like, "Get all this wrapping off of him and anointing and stuff off of him. He's alive. He's not dead." But notice how Jesus said that he's asleep. Now, why would Jesus say he's asleep? He knows full well he's been alive for 33 years. He knows that Lazarus is actually dead, but he still calls it asleep. It brings up other language later in the New Testament in which, Paul and other people will say um, that believers are asleep, knowing full well that they're dead. And it raises an interesting point. You know what I mean? To condense it all down, it's that God values your spiritual reality above your physical reality. It doesn't mean your
Mm,
physical reality is not important. Jesus still mourned with people. He still wept with people, right? But
right.
he also said he's asleep. He's just physically asleep. When believers die, they said they sleep. You're going to see him on the other side, and you're going to see him in a real state. The Bible addresses, uh, in an eschatological sense, it addresses the judgment to come, uh, as people who go to hell. It addresses that as the second death, the true death. So there's a sense in which, you know what I'm saying, someone might be lost, you know what I mean? Someone might be lost to us, passed away from this world, but if they're a believer, we have the comfort of saying they're asleep. And it doesn't mean that you're in denial of the reality. It just means that you're actually aware of the true spiritual reality.
That's good.
Yes, sir. You know what I'm saying? I'm trying to
That's good.
hopefully trying to have some people encouraged.
That's good. Even when this man is tired, you can't sleep on his ability to exegete.
Mm. You feel me? Look, bro, I've been in the word more consistent the last couple of weeks and stuff. You know what I'm saying? Glory to
For
God.
sure. For sure. That's good.
All right, y'all. We finna get into some of these things. I can't read the whole thing, but I sent Miles a Twitter thread, and this guy was talking about the importance of reading the Bible in its original language, right? And like how it unlocks certain things. And for his example, he used um the Tower of Babel, right? Which is is actually a very interesting story. But he raises three questions that are like kind of hard, that are like central to the story, that are a little more difficult than you might imagine to answer. And those three questions, the first one is, what did Babel's builders do wrong? The second one is, why did God punish them as he did? And the third one is, what is the message of the story? And I think before I get to reading this, Miles, what kind of like, when you remember hearing about the Tower of Babel talked about in church services or in your own reading or whatever, like how do people usually, what's your understanding of that story?
Uh, so previous to reading this, I think that whenever I've heard the Tower of Babel be talked about, which I actually don't believe was super often now that I think about it.
Right.
But whenever I did hear it talked about, I think the central thing that was called out was the aspiration of all the people to like build the tower to heaven. Um, and I think what was like mainly called out about that was like, oh, they're like trying to be on God's level or something to that effect. But
Mm-hmm.
it wasn't anything that was like super deep or anything like that. That was kind of just like a basic like understanding of it. Recently, in recent years,
Mm-hmm.
um, I've heard it be said like, oh, well, the sin was like they didn't disperse, like God said, be fruitful and multiply, and then like they stayed in one spot. So those are kind of like I guess the two explanations of the Tower of Babel, of the sin of Babel that I've heard over the years.
Yeah, I think the one that I heard most often similarly was the like pride. It was always is usually a message about pride, and like, oh, don't build a tower up to God, and don't like deny his rules and stuff. Which this person, this thread we gonna read isn't necessarily negating any that are going against that, but it's just interesting little things that I think, um like recently, I think I've been at certain times I try to read the Bible as like you got to put your just straight up literary hat on, and like remember you're reading a story. Sometimes like you're reading a story, And there's certain things that good storytellers and good stories do. Like sometimes they just infer that you know things from earlier in the story, you know? And like the Bible does that all the time, like all the time. But finna get into some of these things. So he talks about a couple different articles that you can read on it and stuff, but he gets into it and he goes he says, so is Babel a story about a unified community of builders whose only sin was challenging God for primacy in the heavens? Was God's destruction of the public spirited society just as much threat neutralization as punishment? And he said, I believe the answer to these is no. And this is where I got interesting for me. He said, before we get to the Hebrew for real, something's wrong with Babel, and I didn't even realize this. He said in Genesis, the Babel narrative is in Genesis 11. He said the chapter begins with, now the whole earth had one language and the same words. And he said that's mad weird because Genesis 10 had just gotten through saying the exact opposite. And he quotes Genesis 10:5, in which the Bible says that they spread in their lands, each with his own language, which means that, I mean, obviously it's kind of a bit of a gap. We don't know when these things happened exactly, but within this time frame, humanity has had the chance to do what God said, like spread out, fill the earth, have dominion, and then completely do a 180 and like all come back to the same place and have one language. And I'm not a linguistics type person for real, but like I feel like it would be nearly impossible for people to come back together and then like re-find one common language. Like that feels almost impossible.
Uh, I mean, perhaps, but there is one way that we've seen it happen before, which he actually talks about later on.
uh,
He gets into that a little bit later on.
for sure. I'm finna hit some highlights with it, but so he talks about the phrase they use in 11 Genesis 11:3, and they say, "Let us make bricks." And this word for let this phrase "let us make bricks," they say it shares. Man, I'm not gonna get into all this. Some of it's kind of semantics, right? Um, the point is, this phrase only appears one other time in the Bible, and it's "You shall no longer give the people straw to make bricks," and that verse is from Exodus, and it's when Pharaoh forces the Israelites into slavery, so that because they got brick quotas, and essentially saying this connection is supposed to make you realize that there's some inferred slavery going on here, right? Uh, uh, you basically just double down with that with another phrase. Um, whew. But anyway, all right, here we go. So they said God's pronouncement. Take God's pronouncement about Babel. Behold, they are one people and they have one language. The phrase "one people" appears one other time in Genesis. When Jacob's son negotiate with the clan of Shechem about how to merge their respective families, they offered to Shechem, "We will dwell with you and become one people." That's Genesis 34:16. Two peoples connecting across difference. Sounds great, right? He said wrong. Jacob's sons had this conversation under duress. Shechem had raped their sister Dinah and held her captive. They were hoping to rescue her and punish the perpetrators. Shechem's eagerness to become one nation with Jacob's family was a shiny lie covering up assault. That's kind of crazy. The allusion to exploitative societies did not stop there. Remember Babel's objective: a city and a tower with its top in the heavens. There is literally only one other reference in the Bible to a city in the sky. When Moses pronounces God's judgment upon the wicked societies in Canaan, we're told that these nations possess cities great and fortified up to heaven. That's in Deuteronomy 9. And the Bible story goes even further with this comparison. He said, consider, for instance, what God says about Babel. And this is a quotation, and nothing that they propose to do will now be impossible for them. That's 11:6. The word impossible is ibatzer. This root appears nearly 40 times in the Bible and almost never means be impossible. So why is it used here? The answer is that the root usually means fortified, as in cities great and fortified up in heaven. Remember that from Deuteronomy 9. Guess the root used in the word fortify. It's that word yibatzer. Sorry, y'all. I need to brush up on my Hebrew for real, for real. I can't be saying these things, bro.
Hey, you doing it better than me.
The point here is that there's a lot of literary things going on that you really sometimes you can only catch with the language. Like you can only catch with the original language. And I think my question was, so in Islam, right? I don't know if this is still a popular belief or it was ever a popular belief. The way it was explained to me and the things that I found through my own personal research was that like only in Arabic was the Quran able to like really inspire you and like speak to you truly as how God intended it, because that was the language in which it was delivered. And I was wondering, like, do you think that there's anything more than just like literary stuff? Not that the literary stuff is like completely a throwaway, but like, do you think that there's anything else lost? Do you think there's anything actually lost through like us having to do a step of translation?
Mm-hmm. I think that's a good question. I don't know if um I don't know if there's necessarily anything else lost aside from the literary devices and things of that nature. Um I think cultural differences definitely play a factor with our Western way of thinking versus the thinking of the time and the culture that exists more so in the Eastern Hemisphere. So I think that it's good that we do have people who are dedicated to like going back and studying the original languages, and that they're able to like point out these different things to help make connections that we never saw before. But I don't necessarily think that simply because we are not reading it in the original language that we are fundamentally like missing a portion of the word's power. Um, that's not to say that like what am I trying to say? I think that's not to say that there's not there's not to say that there's not things that additional things that you can pick up from the original language, like we were just talking about. Just this like shedding light on the Babylon story and recognizing like, oh wow, like there was a lot more at play than just people trying to build a city to reach heaven. But in terms of like I guess this strictly like, is the power of God diluted because you're not reading it in the original language? I don't think it is.
Well, that's definitely fair. That's definitely fair. I know that like when I first was like I'm gonna learn Hebrew, and maybe this is why my like drive for it has gone down a little bit. I still found a way to talk about Arrival. I was gonna scrap the movie joint, but I still found a way to talk about it. So have we talked about uh the like basis of arrival before?
I think we mentioned it a podcast or two ago, but you can still give a slight overview real quick.
You're right. If I did, whatever. This is just your time to go watch it. Um, so it's based on a linguistic theory that basically goes, the language that you learn to speak, the language that you speak, informs the way that you think, and thus informs the way that you experience everything, right? So, um, in the movie, well, I guess I won't spoil the movie, but it takes that idea and it brings it to like the nth degree. Like it's a linguistics professor learning an alien language, and it does a whole bunch of crazy stuff from there. But it's based on that idea, and I think I took that idea and I kind of ran with it from the standpoint of like I don't know that there's. I think I agree that there's not like a special, like God's not going to move more powerfully because you're um excuse me, like God's not going to move more powerfully because you read it in Hebrew and not in English or whatever. But I definitely had a feeling or thinking of like, um, but for some reason, this is the people and the language and the time or whatever that God chose to reveal himself in this way. And like, I understand on many levels that that's not like actually important, but
Mm-hmm.
part of me has always been like, there must be something to it. Like there must be something to Hebrew or something to their culture, but I don't know. I do not know.
Yeah, but like I said earlier, definitely shout out to the people who study the ancient, like the ancient languages,
Facts.
and bring us these insights. Because I was reading through this thing and I was definitely intrigued every word.
No, for real. It's dummy interesting. I'm gonna try to remember, so I'm gonna say it here, but I'm gonna try to link it in the show notes. It's a thread on Twitter. Um, Shout out to my guy, Mike
Yeah.
Fazzolero, studying those biblical languages, doing God's work
Yeah,
out here
yes,
for real,
sir.
for
Yes, sir.
real. This does lead me to another question, and I asked Heather this question, and her answer to it was pretty um straightforward, and I think I agree with her for the
Mm-hmm.
most part. But the question here is all truth really God's truth? I think that's an idea that like I really latched onto when I started like reading a little more philosophy and just thinking about other things more. And like, have you
Mm-hmm.
heard that? Is that a phrase that like comes up, at least even if personally for you a lot?
It doesn't come up a lot for me, but it's definitely something I've heard more so while I was at Liberty. I started hearing it. I got at Liberty, and I think more so like in the last few years that I was there, I started hearing it a little bit more.
Yeah. So my thought process is like, okay, I have like a sub question with it, and it's like, okay, is a realization that you get from a non-Christian medium or like media or whatever, like is that actually going to be beneficial for you if it's true?
I would say it depends on what the piece of information you got is.
Elaborate on
um,
that.
which that might seem kind of like an on the fence thing, I guess. But so when I first read this question in the show notes, um, I don't know if I actually formed like a full thought on this yet, but
Mm-hmm.
my first my mind first went to a bunch of people that are like in the manosphere.
Yeah.
um, and the reason that the reason that my mind went there is because I know a few people that are definitely influenced by their different, I guess, I don't know, teachings.
Mm-hmm. For sure.
I don't know if teachings is too strong of
Teachings
a
is the
word,
right
but
word for sure.
teachings. That's influenced by their teachings, their way of thought, their beliefs about the world. And I don't really delve in too much into that world. I've heard some different conversations that have been had, some different discussions that have been had, but I don't really, listen to the main players in that world too often. But the reason my mind went there is because there are certain things that they say that probably are true um, if you subscribe to following the world's way of doing things. And what I mean by that is like uh, so one of I guess one of their big things is like kind of explaining how people get into like relationships, and they talk a lot about hypergamy, and which is like the idea of like, I guess for them specifically, it's like women, I guess, dating people who have dating men with more money, so they're trying to like, I guess, date up financially in a sense. um and so I think that there may be some truth to that for, I don't know, a certain section of people. Um, and if you are trying to operate within the system of the world, I think that that information is probably beneficial to you.
Mm-hmm.
But I think also a lot of the information that they give is inconsequential to people who are called to live according to the word and live according to God's kingdom. Um, if you're, what I'm saying, if your goal is to like sleep around a bunch, then sure, this information that they give you could probably help you, you know, um, get a lot of women to sleep with you. Perhaps, I don't know. But as Christians, that's not what we are called to do or focus on. For us, we are, if you want to have sex, you got to do that within a biblical marriage. One man,
Mm-hmm.
one woman. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So I guess to answer the question, is it if a realization from like a non-Christian media source, is it actually beneficial for you? Perhaps. But like perhaps not. I guess it all just depends on like what you're operating in. What are you operating in?
Yeah, I think that's one of those things where it's like, okay, like, so let's say like you're in that, and it's like, okay, yeah, like following this advice is gonna get me laid a bunch. Like, I don't know that just because it works means that it's true. You know what I'm saying? I don't know if that
Yeah, I
like.
see what you're saying. I see what you're saying. I guess then that would define I guess then people would be like, "Oh, well, is there a difference between something that works and something that's true?" Which you probably have to get into like definitions and be a lot more specific.
Look, I feel like I'm seeing this thing. It's like like the big and small infinities type thing.
Nah, what's up with that?
So there's the idea where it's like, okay, you count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, on and on and on. You Those
Mm-hmm.
numbers go up to infinitely, right? Like you can count infinitely.
Right.
But then there's also an idea, and they call it like a small infinity or whatever, where it's like
Mm-hmm.
there's an infinite amount of values also between the numbers 1 and 2.
Oh yeah,
Um,
that's true. Okay.
and like, it feels like one of those things where it's like, okay, there's like a big T truth. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Ultimately, but then there's kind of like these little sub. categories of true things, and I think sometimes I'm like, okay, well, knowing that there's like a big T truth out there, it has to connect to that to be true, right? And I'll tell you where my mind went. My mind went to um like mediums and astrology and stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, what about people who have um like genuinely learned some of these like arts? You know what I mean? Like a person who's legitimately a medium is doing something that is like true, right? But
Mm-hmm.
true in the sense of like it's real and they're not lying.
Mm-hmm.
Not lying about what they're doing anyway. But like I wouldn't say that it's just because it's true that it's beneficial for you to go talk to a medium, you know?
Right.
But I feel like to say all truth is God's truth, I feel like I was reflecting on this story in Samuel where Saul goes to a medium, and this medium like calls up um I think he calls up Samuel. I think at this point he was dead, or maybe it was Eli. He like calls him up, and this man is like, "Bro, why did you call me up? I'm dead. Let me rest." And he's like, "I need your help." And the guy's like, "Fine." And he like gives like a prophecy and like all this stuff. And that experience was true, but it was very clearly not what God wanted. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And it's one of those things where I'm like, okay, does that mean that like obviously there has to be some delineation here, unless you define true or truth, I guess, as like not something that is objectively not false or is like objectively provable, but rather is like I don't want to say state of being, because state of being is like a cop out. I feel like it's like a cop out explanation, but
Mm-hmm.
like I feel like saying all truth is God's truth only makes sense if the definition of true is like I'll say proximity to God, you know? Like
Mm-hmm.
you don't mean true as in factually true. It's true as in like my bow is true, you know? Like my arrow is true, meaning that like it's
Mm-hmm.
reliable and it is like I don't want to say loyal because it's an inanimate object, but like it's I mean it's always done right by me. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
I just felt like getting a little
Yeah.
heady. I felt like getting a little heady with this one.
No, I feel you on that. It's definitely, I think it, yeah, I think that in the end, it definitely comes down to like, what are you defining true as? Um, Cause like I said, there's probably a lot of things that you'll find, uh, in life that are true, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they are beneficial for you to, I guess, engage
Yeah,
in or necessarily apply.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
You ever got your palms read?
Never.
No, I haven't. I haven't either.
No.
I
No,
remember
I
someone.
don't believe I ever have.
Oh my gosh, I wish I remember when this was. I want to say it was in. I want to say it was in middle school, where someone was like, "Oh, I can read palms." It's just like, what do you mean? Get that freaking witchcraft Wicca. I'm playing. I'm playing. All right, I
know,
actually
but
saw this earlier and I didn't have a chance to add it. I didn't have a chance
uh-huh.
to add it, but I was wondering what you think about this. Do you feel like this is a cop out? So I saw an ad on Instagram, and I'm looking for like a chart to send you. But
Mm-hmm.
this it was this thing that was like there's different kinds of intelligence,
Hmm.
and uh, it was like nine different types of intelligence or something. And I was wondering, I was like, dang, do you think that is this fact or cap? You know what I mean? Because it's
Hmm.
kind of like, on one hand, I feel like, oh, I kind of get this. Like, dang, hold on. I'm trying to find a good one. But I think this is I think I found a good one that's like a gist of it kind of thing. But on one
Okay.
hand, it's like, I'm texting it to you. Dang, you cannot read that joint at all. Hold on.
All right, hold on. No, I can't.
Dang.
I can read. I can read like the bolded parts, I guess.
All right, hold
All right,
on.
you got spatial, not naturalist, existential, interpersonal, bodily, kinesthetic, linguistic, interpersonal. Hmm.
Yeah.
Let me go ahead and Google it real quick. I'll pull it up and see if I can find a.
And I'm like, I'm just looking at it and I'm like, okay, like, so since this is whatever, so this one, I'm gonna read you the areas in which they say you can have different kinds of intelligence. So there's spatial, which is
Mm-hmm.
visualizing the world in 3D. There's a naturalist, which is understanding living things and reading nature. There's musical, which is discerning sounds, their pitch, tone, rhythm, and timbre. There's logical and mathematical, which is quantifying things, making hypotheses, and problem solving. There's existential, which is tackling the questions of why we live and why we die. Interpersonal, which is sensing people's feelings and motives. Bodily and kinesthetic, which is coordinating your mind and your body. Linguistic, which is finding the right words to express what you mean. And there's interpersonal, or intrapersonal, sorry, understanding yourself and want, what you feel and what you want, excuse me. And I'm like, I think that there's merit in that. I think people are better at these things that, and like those things aren't usually tested. But would you call those things areas of like intelligence?
Mm, I don't know. I think I don't intelligence.
Yeah.
I guess traditionally I wouldn't consider it intelligence because of I guess that's just the way that we use the word intelligence. Is specifically is usually talking about like um education wise is typically when we think about intelligence, like are you good at um like school, for lack of better terms, like can you understand, but we use it specifically for like certain things. Like I don't know that I don't know that we would take like the average musician, I don't say average musician, but we would take the average musician and necessarily say, oh, like they're super intelligent. We might say they're super creative.
Mm-hmm.
Um, unless you get to people like, and I'm gonna use rappers here. So like you get to like a Kendrick Lamar, and people are like, oh, like Kendrick Lamar's intelligence is like crazy because he's super, like he thinks super deeply and like he's able to connect all these different things. Um, but I don't know that like if you took someone who's like less lyrical, and like if you would still apply the word intelligence to them, unless you're like prefacing it by saying they are specifically a musical genius. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And I guess
Um,
I guess that's what he's trying to challenge. Like a musical genius is a genius worthy of the same respect as like a math like a math whiz, I guess.
mm-hmm.
Which
Yeah, I
I can
think.
get behind that on some level.
Yeah, I think that I think there's some merit, like you said, to this chart. Um, that's funny though. They say the bodily kinesthetic, like that man's an athletic genius.
See, that just sounds goofy, don't it? Like, listen, LeBron James is a freak of nature, and he's like well, I would call that man a genius at basketball. But is that
Well,
bodily kinesthetic, or is that like he like a tactician?
he's a mixture of different things that he applies to basketball.
That's true. That's true.
Is it like I think that are these types of intelligence, or are these like I I don't know. I feel like you could probably take each of these things and like uh what's the word I'm looking for? Not categories. Maybe factors is the word I'm looking for.
Mm-hmm.
Like when like they all play a part in making up your making up your
Okay, okay,
intelligence.
okay.
I can't find the word
So
I was
you're
looking for,
saying
so we're just gonna go with factors.
instead of saying that these are, I mean, factor is a good word, I think. Like instead of saying that these are all their own kind of intelligence, these are all just the different things that make up what we call intelligence.
Yeah, I think that might be something fair because um because you look at if you look at like your average athlete, and when we say average athlete, I'm not talking about the LeBron James of the world.
Yeah,
I'm gonna talk about like let's talk about the dude, the 12th man on the bench that's probably not gonna play at all.
yeah,
That dude probably is a very intelligent player because he's got to have some level of the bodily kinesthetic. He's also got to have, I would think, some portion of the logic in order to be able to think through what's happening on the court.
yeah,
There's not a, I don't think you'll see a lot of athletes that are going to make it to that like elite level that don't have an understanding at all of what's happening. Like they may not be like LeBron James type to where they like see stuff before it's happening, can tell like break down every single play, you know what I'm saying?
mm-hmm.
But they have a understanding enough to where it's like for them they can see what's happening and they know what to do next. You know what I'm saying? It's like they're not dumb.
Yeah. No, that's true.
Like they're not unaware. So I think that that kind of just goes into um just other different areas of life. It's just that it's just expressed each it's just expressed differently, I guess, depending on like what you're doing.
Yeah. No, that's fair. That's very fair. I think like I think my thing with it was I was like, okay, like I see where it's coming from a certain extent, right? Because I'm like, okay, excuse me, I'm like academically, right? Someone might not
Mm-hmm.
call me smart, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
But I would argue personally that I have a certain level of aptitude in the existential area, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And like I don't know that I would be like I don't know that I'd ever be like, well, actually, I'm existentially or philosophically intelligent. I just say no, I'm not actually dumb. Like I'm not dumb. I just am not good at like school or whatever, you know? And if some of these other things
Yeah.
feel more like aptitude rather than intelligence, but maybe intelligence is really just a measure of aptitude and I'm just misunderstand. I just don't know what intelligence is actually.
Well, I mean, like, I think aren't there like IQ tests where like they make you like for example like spatially, aren't there like puzzles where it'll be like, oh, test your IQ, and it's like how quickly can you solve this like this 3D puzzle or whatever.
Yeah, yeah, no, that is
So
actually I
like
feel like so.
yeah, so it's like not everything that's like dealing with IQ is specific to like math and language necessarily. There's definitely different parts of IQ that we're tracking. I think it's just that people don't typically think about it.
In this way, yeah. Hey, that's fair. That's very fair. Felt like I was like, damn, I was like, dang, is this man attempting to try to make sure that we trying to make sure that everyone feels like they got a way that they're intelligent? Like,
Uh, Perhaps, but I do think that there are some people who, they may gotta work a little bit harder to get all the areas up. You know what I'm
yeah,
saying?
is that even a goal? I mean, I suppose it should be, but I don't know.
Like I don't, I feel like somebody has to be good at something. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, yeah,
And it may not like, it may not, you may not like, it may not come naturally to you necessarily, but I think that generally speaking, everybody has something that like if you work at it, you could be good at it.
I'd agree with that. I would. Yeah, see, man, this joint is. See, now I'm looking at a different one, right?
Mm-hmm.
And this one got rid of existential and replaced it with spatial.
Well, spatial was already on there. And my voice just cracked.
This is no. I'm looking at a different one. I'm looking at a different one. This one was on CNBC, and they said
Okay.
it was a bunch of Harvard people, I guess. And this one,
Mm-hmm.
they did 8 kinds of intelligence.
Oh, okay.
They did spatial intelligence, bodily kinesthetic, musical, linguistic, logical, mathematical, interpersonal, intrapersonal, and naturalistic.
Okay.
So these leave off the existential kind.
So they say, if you a philosopher, we don't care.
Facts. Crazy, bro. Philosophy, theology, all those things, you don't matter. All right, bro.
They probably fall into other categories somewhere.
Really? You think maybe naturalistic? You think like it has to do with the way we living things, kind of.
Nah, never mind. It's got to be its own category.
You think it's that different than naturalistic? Because I'm kind of convinced by that.
Well, the definition I'm looking at for naturalistic is understanding living things and reading nature.
I feel like you can
I
make
feel
an
like that
argument
one's
that that's what philosophy is.
you. You probably could make an argument for it, but I feel like the naturalistic category is more so like tangible, like you are literally tangibly interacting with nature and things around you, as opposed to like the existential is like,
Yeah.
sure, you might be thinking about life, but it's like, the intangibles of life.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's true. That's true. No,
So
you're right. You're right. Well, listen. While we pondering things, let's ponder on why Liberty just got emergency blue lights.
it's because they need them.
Congratulations, you know what I mean, to people who are entering a campus that is that much safer, you know what I mean? I'm glad that, you know, I mean, it happened, but definitely odd. I feel like the first time I heard about any bad thing happening on campus, I was like, man, we really don't have those lights. Like, like those are like all over my city. You know what I mean? Like, what? I feel like this is a really simple, easy thing to just like do. You know what I mean? They be putting lights up everywhere, and they've done it now. You know what I mean? So I
Mm-hmm.
suppose the time for that is all over. So I did want to acknowledge it. You know what I mean? Give a little
Facts.
give a little bit of kudos. Also, the group that began last year, 2 years ago, is now officially a club. They're called the LSAA, the Liberty. I believe it's yeah. I think it's Liberty Students Against Assault or Against Abuse. Let me go peep to be sure. I do. I'm 80% sure it is the LSAA though. Yeah, Liberty Students Against Abuse. So that is now an official club on campus, which is lit.
That's good. That's good.
But
Hold on.
it is way past my bedtime. So Miles, I'm gonna ask you to close this one out with name is patent pending. Uh but man, tell me a little bit about the music you've been listening to this week, last couple weeks.
All right, bro. Um, Now the reason that I thought that this would be good to talk about is because specifically in Christian hip hop, there are some people who are coming up that are making music that is very good and very encouraging, and it's just been you know what I'm saying, it's been kind of I've been I've been I've been in the I've been listening to Christian hip hop for a very long time. For a very long time, Christian hip hop was behind. It was very behind, but really listening to these new people coming out, it's been really fun to see it's been really fun to see how far Christian hip hop has come. And so one guy that that I think that I think should be highlighted right now is my guy Holvey. His first name is
Shout out to
Christopher.
Hovey.
His last name is Holvey. Uh, he just goes by Holvey. Um, but the reason that I really appreciate Holvey is because he's very versatile. He's very versatile. He doesn't have
That's
just
generous.
strictly one sound. I don't. You say he's generous.
Yeah.
Why is that generous?
I think he tries a lot of things.
I guess that's fair. Um, I guess that's fair. But I don't know. I
I'm
really
being
appreciate
disrespectful. I'm being disrespectful. He can do a lot too, you know.
it. Like, because when I first went, so the first song I ever heard from him, he was like on one of the Reach Records summer playlists before like they signed him. It was like the first track I heard from him was called Motions, and it's a track where he's like kind of singy, a little bit sing songy. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so I go back and I check out, like, he only had like maybe 2 or 3 songs on Apple Music at the time when I went to go check him out. And I was like, okay, I can rock with this dude.
Yeah.
But then like he starts putting out stuff with Reach Records, and this man is starting to rap, like actually rap, like he's
Yeah.
flowing on beat.
No, for real.
Like he's flowing, and I'm like, oh, okay. So he got the little bit of singing, he got a little bit of rapping going on. And so whenever like he puts out something new, like I'm excited because I'm like, well, what are we gonna get? Because it's not like he doesn't have like a boring sound. I don't think he has a boring sound. So, if you've been looking for somebody to listen to, go check out my man Holvey. He just released a single last week called "Have Me."
Jones fire. I can't even hold you. That Jones
That
crazy.
song was good. The sample was nice. I heard the sample. I heard the little sample come in. I was like, oh, this is
Who
about
you
to go
sample?
crazy.
I know it's in there.
I don't know. I don't know.
It's something
I don't
gospel.
know what the sample is. I don't know what the sample is, but this man started going on the track, and I was like, this man is doing it. This man is doing it. So that's my recommendation for people who are looking for somebody to listen to. If you haven't checked him out, check him out.
Tough, tough. I
You
give
got
me some.
anybody that you've been listening to?
Yes, sir. For all my people out there who want to be listening to Christian music, but sometimes you want that joint to be riding. You know what I mean? But you don't want it to be like you're not trying to listen to like worship music, but you're trying to listen to Christian music. Shout out to Blake for putting me onto this man, but his name is DKG Kai. It's in KIE. And let me tell you what, he make like Detroit style rap, bro.
Mm-hmm.
And man, he just like he it feels when you listen to it, it feels like your boy is freestyling next to you. You know what I mean? If it's like your
Mm-hmm.
boy is freestyling next to you and like he not cussing or anything, but he definitely not sorry. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And but he's like still just unapologetically like he sounds like he listened to the music that he makes now, which I appreciate because
Mm-hmm.
sometimes people just like they be rapping and it feels like they got into it because like they liked it but they weren't able to actually be around it all that much, or like they were only able to
Mm-hmm.
be around like the Christian version of it, and this guy definitely does not sound like that. So DKG Kai, or maybe it's just Key, maybe it's DKG Key, but either way,
Hey, that man album called "Save Not Soft." Don't play with him.
yeah, bro. Specifically, you know what I mean? Check out the song Holy Water. Uh check out the song was it Staple, not Stapled to the Cross, but Signed to the Cross. Those two songs been, and Cheat Code. Those three songs been I've been spinning those this last week, so check him out for real. All right, Miles, you got
But
anything you want to hit? You want to say to the people?
anything I want to say to the people? Nah, man, not really. Actually, no. Let me say this real quick. Um, I've had to do a lot of reflection over this last summer, sitting at home, not
Mm-hmm.
working. um, One thing that I kind of realized this about myself, um, but I think it's definitely become apparent. It's like time goes by fast, man.
Facts.
um, I had some time the other day, and I was going back through, and I was kind of like reading through some of like I used to journal a lot when I first got to college, and I was like literally journaling every day. So I went back and like I was reading through them joints, and it's like, dang, like I blinked and 6 years went by. I blinked and 6 years went by. Um, so that being said, just like really take the time to appreciate, where you're at right now. Take the time to appreciate every day, appreciate the moments. Um, you know, I know for me specifically, I can get caught up thinking about the past. Some people I know get caught up trying to think about the future too much. But I feel like it's not enough of us that really take the time to appreciate the moment that we're in right now, and recognize that that time is gonna go by quickly. So, you know, that's my word to the people. Enjoy the present moment. Appreciate where you're at.
Man, that's real. Some people won't get the gravity of what you just said, but we'll let it hit them. Let it hit them slowly.
Yes, sir.
Appreciate you very much. Appreciate everyone for tapping in, listening to us this week. Hopefully we get this camera situation sorted out and be back to normal on the next one. But until then, appreciate y'all and God bless.
And we catch y'all later.